So thank you everybody for showing up. I really appreciate it. We're going to be going over Appraise-It Pro today. Now, a couple of things. First of all, there is, for those of you who are watching live, there is a little chat bubble icon that is going to be up at the top. If you click on that, that'll take you to the chat section, and that's a way that you can ask questions as we go along. I may wait until the end to actually answer questions. If I happen to notice it, it's pertinent, I may answer it while I'm going over what we're going to be going over. Also, if you're watching this after the fact, then you can still ask a question. All you have to do is send an email to training@sfrep.com, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. My name is Matt Johnson. I do training and corporate communications and marketing and development. I do a lot of things. It's a small company. We all wear a lot of hats around here. We also all work from home, so welcome to my home office. That's why there's a very mundane background. We work from home now, and that's going to be permanent post-COVID. So it's worked out really well for us, and so we decided to go ahead and just move to completely work from home. So all of our developers, customer service, everything is work from home now, and it's working out really well for us. So with all that being said, we'll get started. It's going to take about 30 minutes or so to go over what I want to go over. Most of this is going to be geared towards people who currently are SFREP customers who are using Appraise-It Classic and want to move over to Appraise-It Pro. However, if you have any questions that are related to Appraise-It Pro outside of that, I'll be happy to answer them for you as well. So we'll go and get started. Now, a couple of things that I really want you to be aware of with Appraise-It Pro. First of all, there is no extra charge for Appraise-It Pro if you are already an SFREP customer. So it is included as part of your Appraise-It subscription plan on all levels. If you want to try out Appraise-It Pro, all you'll have to do is contact our sales office at 800-523-0872. Most of you already know the number. If you don't know that number, you just go to sfrep.com and get that number, but it's 800-523-0872, and they will be happy to go ahead and get you set up. All they'll have to do is add it to your account, and then they can send you a video that can explain to you how you can install and set up Appraise-It Pro, or they can schedule a time with our tech support so that they can come in, log into your computer and set everything up for you. One of the cool things when you install Appraise-It Pro is it is going to convert all of your databases and everything over automatically. So it'll take a little bit of time on that first run, but then everything will be ready for you. So it's a very easy, painless install. If you're even slightly computer literate, you should have no problems in downloading and installing Appraise-It Pro. The other cool thing to remember is that Appraise-It Pro can exist on your computer side by side with Appraise-It Classic. So you can install Appraise-It Pro and you can move over at your own pace. As a matter of fact, you'll see over here, I have Appraise-It Classic and Appraise-It Pro installed on this computer, and I can run them side by side. You can start an appraisal in Appraise-It Classic and then load it into Appraise-It Pro. It's fully backwards compatible. We also have some forward compatibility as well, and what that means is that you can start an appraisal in Appraise-It Pro, and then you can move it back over to Appraise-It Classic for whatever reason. Maybe you started it in Pro, can't figure something out, you're under a time crunch, you want to go back to Classic. You can do that. There's a couple of caveats there. Things like formatting and a couple of addenda that are in Pro that aren't in Classic, those will be stripped out. But for the most part, you won't have any problems moving to and fro, okay? So Appraise-It Pro is, and I'm gonna go ahead and launch it here. Now you won't see the splash screen, it's gonna be on my other screen, but then Appraise-It Pro should come up here in just a second. A couple things about Appraise-It Pro as a program. It is built on the latest design technology from Microsoft. So it is built for Windows 10. It will run in Windows 8. It will not run on Windows XP, Windows Vista, or now Windows 7. We've ended all support for Windows 7, as has Microsoft. So if you're still on Windows 7, now is the time to buy a new computer and upgrade to Windows 10, or just upgrade your computer to Windows 10. But it will run on Windows 8, and it is built specifically for Windows 10. And because it's built in the Microsoft development environment, when Windows 11 comes out here in a couple of months, it will work just fine on Windows 11 too. There won't be any compatibility problems. It is also the only 64-bit appraisal software on the market. Now, what does that mean? Software packages like a la mode, ACI, Bradford, they're all 32-bit. We're 64-bit. Now we can run on a 32-bit, we're backwards compatible, but if you have a computer that was bought in the last 10 years or so, you're gonna be on a 64-bit computer. And what that means is because our program is 64-bit, when it basically mostly has to do with memory and resource management. So on a modern computer, on my desktop here, I have 16 gigabytes of memory. Your computer may have 12, it may have 8, whatever. A 32-bit program can only address about 3.5 gigabytes of memory. In reality, it's 4 gigabytes, but by the time you go with overhead and all this other stuff, it's about 3.5 gigabytes of memory. We can address as much memory as you have in your computer. So on my computer, it can address the full 16 gigabytes of memory. What does that mean for you? That means that, hopefully lights flickered. Hopefully we don't lose power here for some reason. I don't know why we would. It's nice outside. What does that mean for you? That means that when you are building a report and you put a lot of 50-page PDFs in there, you put a lot of high resolution images in there, other software would have to swap out that stuff to the hard drive, which is very slow and can bog down and make the program lag. Ours can keep all of that in memory. Now, of course, it's not going to hog all of your memory and make the rest of your computer slow. Windows manages memory, especially with 64-bit programs, really well. But it allows us to put more of that stuff in memory, which means that your software is going to be much more snappy. It's not going to lag. It's not going to be slow. It's not going to be sluggish. And if you have a solid-state drive in your computer, all the better. That'll make all the difference as well. So the look and feel of Appraise-It Pro is quite a bit different from Appraise-It Classic, but there's a lot in here that you're going to find very familiar. And if you have ever used Microsoft Office, then Appraise-It Pro is going to seem very familiar to you because we took a lot of design cues from Microsoft Office. The biggest of which is what we call the backstage. This is something that is in Appraise-It, or rather that is in Microsoft Office as well. So here's how the backstage works. When you first run Appraise-It Pro, it's going to already be in the backstage area. Now, technically, and our developers, they want me to hammer home that this is called the backstage, but I've told you that it's called the backstage. Really, what you guys can think of it as is the file menu. It's like a fancy file menu. So you notice this little arrow up here in the upper left-hand corner. If I click on that, that'll take me to the main editing area of Appraise-It Pro. Now, I don't have a report open right now, so everything is fairly blank here. But if I click back here on the file menu, it takes me back to this backstage area. So yeah, it's called the backstage, but for all intents and purposes, fancy file menu is a great thing to call it. When you first launch Appraise-It, you're going to be in the Welcome to Appraise-It Pro screen. What this is every time Appraise-It Pro launches, it's going to go out to the web and it's going to grab from our servers the latest updates that we have put on here. Now, this can be anything from letting you know that there's a flood map sale, or more than likely, it's going to be maybe some technical information. The last time we put something on here was back in May. We don't update it a lot. We don't put flashy pictures and stuff in there. We want to keep it nice and clean and simple. The last time we updated this was on May 28th to let you know that there was a new training calendar. So for a lot of you, I'm going to go ahead and plug this because it has to do with me. So if you go to the SFREP website, you go to training and you go to training calendar. We now have a calendar here. As soon as it will load, I don't know why it's being slow. There we go. We have a training calendar here that lets you know. So here's the actual training we're in right now. But you can also see that we have one coming up next week, and then we have one coming up on the 29th. I don't have anything on this week because I'm going to be on vacation and I don't want to be bothered. But we have one coming up next Wednesday. If you click on it, you can see all the details for it, including the link. So just letting you know that that is there. And there's some other information here as well. Over here on the left-hand side, this is the menu so that when you're in the fancy file menu, you can do various things. So here is new. This is very similar to file new in Appraise-It Classic. Here you can select which main report type you want to open. And if I double click here, it's just going to open up the default skeleton, the default template for the UAD 1004. However, over here, when I select it over here on the right, I've also got the list of templates. For right now, what I'm going to tell you is that templates are essentially skeletons from Appraise-It Classic, but they're better. And I'll tell you what I mean by that here in a little while. But just know that skeletons and templates, roughly the same thing. So if I wanted to open up my Clyde template, I could double click here and it would open that up, or I could just simply select it and then click on create report. If I want to open a default template, well, we'll go over that here in a little while. There's something I want to show you before I go over that. So anyway, this is where you'll open up your blank new reports. Over here we have open. This is essentially file open, just like it is in Classic. Here we can open an existing report. We can open up a Classic report from Appraise-It Classic. We can also open up a MISMO document. So if you're coming over from a la mode or ACI, or if you're coming over from Bradford or somewhere else, as long as you've been keeping your XML files, you can open up an XML document in Appraise-It Pro and use it as a starting point. So while we cannot legally go into a la mode and transfer all of their reports into Appraise-It Pro because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and if you want a law lesson, I'll go into that for you because I know way more about it than I ever wanted to. But because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1996, we can't break their encryption. Even though it's very weak encryption, we can't break it, can't do it. So what we can do though is if you've been archiving your MISMO documents, we can bring those in. There's also open up a template and open up a Classic skeleton. Opening up a Classic skeleton. A big question I get in these webinars is, can I convert all of my skeletons over to Appraise-It Pro? We do not do that automatically, and there is a reason for that. In the early builds of Appraise-It Pro that we were letting customers test for us, we did do that. But what we found and what they found was that they didn't always want all of their skeletons to be converted over automatically, because a lot of you guys have just dead skeletons that you never use, or the skeletons you do use are dirty. In effect, they have a lot of junk in them that you don't even know about that get brought over when you make that, and we don't know what you want brought over and what you don't want brought over. We thought about making an interface to try to decide all that, and it became very complicated. We didn't want to mess with that. So what we do allow you to do is you can open up a Classic skeleton manually from this area right here, and then when you open it up, you can then edit it, clean it up, and then save it as a template. My recommendation would be only do this if you absolutely need to convert a skeleton over. So if you have a really complex skeleton, then use this to convert it over. Otherwise, I would recommend that you redo your skeletons from scratch in Appraise-It Pro for two reasons. One, you're going to get nice, clean skeletons or nice, clean templates to start your reports off with. That'll be exactly the way you want them, nice and clean. And then the other reason is it's going to help you in getting to know Appraise-It Pro as well. So unless you have some very complex skeletons, I would say just redo your skeletons, or don't convert your skeletons, do your templates from scratch. Sometimes I'm going to use skeletons and templates. It's just because I've worked for this company for 15 years and I'm used to saying skeletons. I mean templates. Okay, I'm only human. Also over here are recent reports. These are the most recent reports that I've opened. This is a test version of Appraise-It that I have on my computer. I don't do appraisals actively, so you'll see that I've only opened 3, but I think the last 10 by default that you've opened are listed here. Continuing on, we have search, and this is basically the file index from Appraise-It Classic, but way better. So here are all of your different search criteria here. So in these existing ones, you can change these. So right now it's selected as county, but if I wanted, that could be assessor's parcel number, but I'm going to put it back as county. If I want county to be after the street address, I can use these little arrows to move it down here. I could continue moving it down, or I could move it back up. If I don't want something, so if I'm never going to be searching by state because I only do one state and that's kind of redundant, then I can hit this little delete button here and I can delete it. But if I decide that I want to put it back, I can come back in here, go down to state, add it, and then I can move it up here so that it is after, wait, where'd it go? I lost it. There we go, up, and then city state. So now it's after, yeah, it's after city. So you can customize this. You can add additional fields if you want. So we had a ton of different fields here that you can search on. And this just works like a regular search or a regular, it works like a column manager does. It works like the file index did. The more information that you put in here, the more narrow your search results are going to be. This, I don't have anything in my file index right now on this particular computer because, like I said, this is a test version of Appraise-It Pro. As a matter of fact, I'm using version 2.3, which isn't even released yet. But so I'm constantly installing and uninstalling Appraise-It Pro, but all you have to do is if you put, the more information you put in here, the more focused your search results are going to be. When you do a search, they'll be listed here in a grid. You can select it and you'll see the front view photo, and you'll also see additional information down here that'll aid you in selecting the right report. And then you can either open that report, or if you already have a report open, you can right click and you can select to install the comp, or to import the comps, or import the listings, things like that. And then finally, we have settings. If you're a tinkerer, if you are a computer person and you feel comfortable, come in here and you can customize Appraise-It Pro to your heart's content. If you are not a computer person, then I would recommend that don't come in here unless you have someone from tech support online. And either way, if you do come in here and you change something, there's a lot of different things to change. If you come in here and you change something, make sure that you jot down a note about what you changed, so that if it creates a behavior that you don't like, you can come back and you can change it back. All right. Okay, so we're now ready to open up a report. So what I'm going to do in order to show you things a little bit more clearly is I'm going to open up a default skeleton. So in this case, I'm simply going to double click, and it's going to open up a default skeleton. Just a second here. There we go. Sometimes I have to wet the whistle there. Okay, so actually, I think I didn't open up a default skeleton. Let's see. Nope, I did not. So do I want to save the report? No, come back, and we'll do the default template. There we go. Okay, so this is a default template. Now, if I go back here, you'll notice there's a little checkbox here for include suggested forms in the default template. That by default is checked. If I were to uncheck that, when I would open up the default template, it would simply have the first 6 pages of the report listed there, and that's it. But because I have include suggested forms listed, if I come over here, and I'm going to go over this more in depth in just a second, but this is essentially the table of contents for my report. You'll see that I have a bunch of suggested addenda that have been placed in here, including the location map, flood map, some comp pages, the sketch, things like that. So we're going to go over the panels first. There are 4 main panels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right here is the report panel. You can think of this as your table of contents. Going to go over that here in just a second. We also have the validator panel. Over here we have our responses. So this is replacing those F keys that you used to have up at the top and all of your other responses. They're now much easier to access right here on the right. And then down here we have the format panel. Then the format panel will be very familiar to you because it's an Appraise-It Classic, but it's known as the UAD helper. So the UAD helper is now called the format panel. When you are not in a formatted field, which in this case formatted fields are green, it is going to show you a color key. So you'll see here the green mean formatted fields. Gray is the active field that I'm currently in. Active checkbox group, extended comment field, inactive field, et cetera, et cetera. So any fields that are a darker blue, they have extended comments associated with them. And then the greens are, these are the formatted fields. So notice when I go into a formatted field, the format panel changes over here and I can fill out everything in the format field. Now, unlike other software vendors, we do not pop up a window right in front of you every time you enter one of these fields, because that's just very intrusive, we found. And because we've all been using UAD for what, 11 years now, I think, 11 or 12, I have to think about it, but 11 or 12 years. A lot of us know what the formatting is by heart anyway. So you can just type everything out in the proper formatting directly into the field and not ever have to go to the format panel. But if you want to use the format panel, you can fill this out, hit apply. So we can do 1, 2, 3. It's just basically it's the same way as it was in Appraise-It Classic. You hit apply and it'll put it in there for you. Now, if you were to type out the formatting yourself and you make a mistake and you tab out of it, the field will turn red. So it's going to be checking after you on your formatting. Okay, so let's go back up here and let's concentrate on the report panel first. Now, like I said, the report panel, this is the key core thing that you need to understand when you're moving over from Classic to Pro. If you get anything out of this particular webinar, this is going to be it. And this is how you build reports in Appraise-It Pro versus Appraise-It Classic. Now, to illustrate this, I'm going to open up Appraise-It Classic here real quick. Hopefully it's registered. I uninstall and install this thing all the time as well. There we go. Pull it over to this monitor. There we go. Okay, so here's Appraise-It Classic. We'll do the same thing we've done in Appraise-It Pro. We'll open up a default skeleton here. And with Appraise-It Classic, what you would do is you would start filling out the report, and then if you needed an addenda, you'll come to Contents, and you'll kind of search, kind of find that addenda in alphabetical order. But the problem with this is that it's hard to find addenda sometimes, especially if you're looking for a very obscure one. And you don't at a glance know what has actually been filled out and what's contained in your report. And if you come back to that report later on, like a week down the road, because your lender or your AMC questions you on something, you're not readily able to see what was in your report and what order it was in. That is different in Appraise-It Pro, because in Appraise-It Pro, oh, I don't have my, give me just a second here. I gotta change something before it starts to cause issues. I don't have my taskbar on, so let's turn, oh, that's not what I want. See taskbar settings, and I want to show taskbar. There we go. Okay, so if I come back over here to Appraise-It Pro, the way that Appraise-It Pro works is you don't build your report at the end when you're ready to create it and print it. Instead, in Appraise-It Pro, you build your report at the beginning and as you move along. So what does that mean? This is the table of contents for this particular report, and this is what is included in the report, nothing more and nothing less. And so one of the funny words, the great words that I love is, that I like to say about this, is you have to keep your report tidy. I love that word. Keep your report tidy. What that means is if you don't need an addendum or a set of addenda, then get rid of it, because you only want things to show up in the report panel that you have filled out and that you are going to be delivering. So in this particular report, if I'm not going to be doing a flood map for whatever reason, then I want to remove it. And to do it, I just select it, click on remove, and say yes, and it's out of there. So make sure you clean this up. If you're not going to be using something, or if you get to the end and you haven't used one of these addendums or addenda, then get rid of it. Now, what if you need an addendum? What if I decide I deleted it, but I actually need that flood map? Well, what I can do is I can click on add. It'll bring up the add remove forms dialog. This is what's really cool, because now you have search capabilities. So let's say I wanted to do flood. So there's my flood map. And then what I can do is I can either double click it and it'll be added to the end of the report listing, or I can drag and drop it. So I can just click on drag, and I can put it over here under location map, hit save and close, and now it's been added back underneath location map. Now let's say that I decide that I want the maps to be right after sketch. So I can click and I can drag them up here. It's freaking out on me. Stop that. There we go. And now I've got location map under sketch and under the flood map. So you can drag these things around, because not only is this what is contained in your report, this is also the order in which it will be created, whether you're printing to PDF, creating NISMO XML, sending to AI Ready, whatever it is, this is going to be the order in which your report is going to be as well. Now we've seen how you can remove something, we've seen how you can add something. What about these little plus icons that you see next to some of these? What these are quick add buttons. So right now I've got comps 1 through 3, which are in the main body of the report. And then I've got sales comps 4 through 6 in here. What if I want 7, 8, and 9? All I have to do is hit a plus. What if I want 10, 11, 12? Just hit plus. And while it's adding these pages, it's also adding the comp photo pages as well. Now, Appraise-It Classic had a limit of 9 comps on the default skeletons. Now you could add more comps, but it was overly complicated to do so. So a lot of people were just kind of limited to 9 comps. In Appraise-It Pro, there are no such restrictions. You can put as many comp pages in here as you want. Now keep in mind, if you use AI Ready or some other portals or delivery methods, they may limit you on the amount of comps you can have, but we don't. You can have as many comp pages as you want in there. Some of these other icons you'll see here, there's a lock icon. What that means is that the square footage calculation addendum, that is required for the report to function correctly, so it's locked. You cannot remove it. And then up here, you'll see that there is a star here. That is the main report. So in this case, that is a 1004 UAD. But what if you wanted to change the report type? In Appraise-It Classic, you would have to save it, then go and open up the new report type, and then import that file in. It was a very convoluted process. So I understand that you would never generally turn a 1004 into a 2055, and maybe there might be some instances where you, but generally you wouldn't do that. I don't want to say never, but it's just easy for me to show you that, okay? So let's say I want to convert, for whatever reason, this 1004 into a 2055. I can do that so much easier in Pro by going to Add. And up here, I'm going to select, instead of Addenda, I'm going to select Primary. And I am going to do 2055. And then notice the 2055, of course, shows up under multiple headings, but this is the one I want, the Exterior Only Inspection Report, Fannie Mae 2055, dated 9 of 2011. So if I double click that, so yeah, that's what I want. Okay, so if I double click that, it's going to say, adding this form will replace your report's primary form and its dependent forms. Do you want to proceed? I'm going to say yes, save and close. And now I have, just like that, converted this report into a 2055. If I had already filled out all of this information, then that information would be placed into the 2055 in its appropriate places. So it's so easy to convert one report type over to the other. Keep in mind, if you were doing a 1004 to 2055, you may actually lose some data, but generally if you're going from a 2055 to a 1004, you're not going to lose anything. So real simple to do that. Let's come down here to the validator. Oh, one more thing I want to show you. You may have noticed it when I opened up another report or another addendum. So I'm going to open up this sales comps 4 through 6. When I do that, notice that it opens it up in a tab, and we use a tabbed interface similar to what your web browser would. So this is kind of like how Chrome or Microsoft Edge or whatever you happen to use as a browser works. Even to the fact that I can move these around. So let me do one more down here. Let's do a sketch page. So I could, look at what I want to actually have viewing here. And then when I'm done with it, I can just close it. That doesn't delete the report or anything. It just means that you're not looking at that particular addendum anymore. And if I open these up, actually, I want to do this with a comparable. So if I open up comps 4 through 6, then what I can do is I can, and you know what? Let me show you this on a multi-screen setup here. Give me just a second here. Okay, so now you can see both of my screens. I know it's a little bit small, and I'm not going to be doing this the whole time, but I just wanted to show you this. One of the things I can do is I can click and I can drag this particular tab out, and now I can move it over here to my other monitor, and then I can maximize that. So now I can come in here and I can go, okay, well, I've got comps 1, 2, and 3, and here's comps 4, 5, and 6. And if I wanted to, I could even make this smaller, and I could get, 7, 8, and 9, bring those over here. And so I could do like, all right, there's that one, and then I can do, okay, here's this one. And I can have as many of these. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I can come in here and I can copy and paste things in between them. So you can have multiple different pages up here, and if I wanted to put them back, just click over here and drag over there. You do the same thing with my panels too. So I could click this panel, I could drag it over here, and then I could make it bigger if I want. I could maximize, take it up the whole screen if I wanted to. And then if I wanted to, I can bring it back over here, use this little wheel, put it back where it was. Let's go back to the regular view here. There we go. Okay, so real easy to pull things out, move them around. Now let's say you do something weird, like you put your report panel back and now it looks all jumbled up and it's like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Well, what you can do is you can come over here to view, reset view to default, say yes, and now everything's back to factory default. It's real simple. Validator panel. How does the validator panel work? Well, there's two types of validation going on. There is a real-time validation that's going on as you go, and then there's a full validation. Now, the full validation is invoked with this little button right here that says validate. I would recommend that you do not do that unless you have gotten to the end of your report. I'm not going to do it now because it's just going to go crazy and the bunches of these cells are going to turn red because I haven't filled anything out in the report. So until you get to about the end of the report, you can rely on the real-time validation, which is checking you as you go along. And an easy way to see that in action is to come over here to the state field. You know what? I want to do this on the UAD 1004. So let me close this. No, that's not what I want to do. No. Let's open the default template back up. Okay. So state, let's say if I put BC in here and I tab out, notice it turns red. It's because British Columbia is not a US state. So it's going to turn red. Now, if I'm way down here and I notice that I have this hard stop over here for the state, all I have to do is double click and it will jump me back to where that problem is. And then I can change it. Instead of BC, I meant to put NC. Tab out, and now it doesn't yell at me. And it also works for territories. So if I'm doing reports in Puerto Rico, I can do PR, tab out. It still accepts PR. GU for Guam still accepts that because that's a US territory. But if I do AB for Alberta, it is going to turn red. Okay, so real simple there. So that's how the validation works. Just remember that before you deliver your report, you're going to want to do that full-blown validation. Now let's come up here to the responses. And with responses, this is really cool how this works. If I type in here 123 ME Street, tab, hold on. I'm a perfectionist, sorry. All right, there, now a tab over. Now for city, notice I have all of these responses over here, and there are multiple ways to use these responses, so much easier than Appraise-It Classic. If I want to do Gastonia, I can just simply double click and there's Gastonia. Or if I had assigned it an F key, let's say I'm going to do Charlotte, then I can hit F4 and it puts Charlotte in there. Or alternately, let's say it is Gastonia, all I have to do is start typing. I can do G and it's going to autofill Gastonia for me, kind of like how it does in your web browser's address bar. So it does an autocomplete if there are more than one, because down here I've got Matthews and Mint Hills. So if I type in M, it's going to do the first one, which in this case is Massillon. I don't know why I put that in there. I don't think that's a suburb of Charlotte, but anyway, there's Massillon. But then as I go in M-A-T, I get to T, it knows I mean Matthews, and it fills that in for me, and then I can just tab out of it. Here's another one. I've got state NC. I just hit F3, and it puts NC in there, and I can tab out, and then I can continue on. Each of these fields can have its own responses. You can have an unlimited number of responses, and you can access them either by assigning an F3 key, beginning to type it out to autocomplete, or you can come over here and just simply double click. Really simple. And to manage your responses, I can come in here and let's say I wanted to add, what is another suburb of Charlotte? I've already got Dallas in there. Mint Hill? No, I got Mint Hill. Gosh. Stallings. Okay, so we'll do Stallings. So ST, oh, I've already got Stallings in there. Anyway, let's just say Asheville. There we go. Asheville, and I want to add that as a response. I just come up here to manage responses. Asheville's already in here. I can give a title by default. I don't think that's necessary unless you're doing multi-line, like a long sentence. I'm gonna do Asheville, and I'm gonna assign Asheville as F5, hit save, and now Asheville is in there. Real simple. And then we've gone over the format panel. It's real simple. It's basically the UAD report panel. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. PDFs. In Appraise-It Classic, you were limited to one PDF. And if you wanted to put multiple PDFs in there, you had to have Adobe Acrobat or some similar program so you could merge PDFs together. It's kind of a pain in the butt. In Appraise-It Classic, all that is gone. In Appraise-It Classic, you can put as many PDFs in there as you want. You just simply come in here to edit. You select PDF. And then I'm going to go to my desktop and PDF. I have two of them here. I'm going to do demo PDF. This is just some random PDF I got off the web about the GRE. So it's a multi-page PDF. So now that's in there. It gets added down here at the bottom automatically as PDF Addendum. Let's say I have another PDF I want to add. Here's PDF demo PDF 2, another random PDF that I got off the internet. That's now added in here as PDF Addendum 2. Well, that's going to be confusing if you have multiple PDFs in here because you don't know which one's which without having to open it up. So what you can do is you can click on rename. I can call this GRE PDF. Hit OK. And I'm going to rename this one. What was this about? Federal assistance. So I can just rename this federal assistance, hit OK. And now just with a glance, I can know which one of these are, what this PDF is without having to open it. And in Appraise-It Pro, you can have an unlimited number of PDFs and you can name them whatever you want, and they can be an unlimited number of pages. Now, just keep in mind, the more PDFs you put into your report, that's going to make your report bigger, and your portal or your delivery method or whatever may have a restriction on how big your file can be. So just keep that in mind. And also keep that in mind when you're adding your photos. A couple other things I wanted to show you. Something I like to call magical shrinking text. You'll see here that we have Asheville. I'm just going to keep typing Asheville. And as I get to the end, watch what happens. Notice that it starts to subtly shrink the text. It's not really noticeable unless you know to look at it. So if you look at this and look at this and look at this, it's not really noticeable that this is slightly smaller unless you know what you're looking for. So if you have a really long city name, or if you're coming down here into these multi-line fields and you want to just put 1 or 2 extra words in there before it trips over to extended comments, or if that field doesn't have extended comments, you want to just 1 or 2 more words, the auto shrinking text, it will only shrink to a certain level and then it'll start running off the end. So, or in the case of a field that has extended comments, it will automatically trigger over to extended comments. So it's a really cool way. You could do that in Appraise-It Classic, but you had to do it manually. So you had to type out this long thing, it wouldn't fit in the field. You had to go in there and manually edit the font for that particular field and the font size. You don't have to do that in Appraise-It Pro, it does it for you automatically. And it works with all fonts. Let's see, I think that's almost everything. One other thing I want to show you here, or two more things. Let's go to the general photos page. Now, in Appraise-It Classic, I've made this a little bit smaller for a reason. In Appraise-It Classic, you had to use, you could double click and you could browse in a photo, which you can do here. I could double click here and then be able to browse in a photo. So I can do that here. We'll select that, and then I can browse in a photo. Right click, and I can do clear, yes. Okay, so you can do that in Appraise-It Pro as well. You can also use Image Manager or Comp Manager, put your photos in. But my favorite way is simply dragging and dropping. So if you have a folder open that contains your all of your pictures, like a photo folder or something like that, or if you put your memory card into your computer that contains all of your photos on it, and you that opens up into a browse window, or if your particular camera software supports dragging and dropping, then now notice there's this little photo here. It's just a stock photo of a house, but you see it's here on my desktop. To add this to the report, all I have to do is drag and drop it. It's real simple. So for those of you who have been using Image Manager is still in Appraise-It Pro, and it's exactly the same. So is Comp Manager. That's why I'm not going to go over them in this training. But you don't have to use Image Manager any longer. You can just simply drag and drop the photos in there. And I found that to be way more convenient than opening up Image Manager and using Image Manager. Just dragging and dropping those photos in. You can do it in nothing flat. Remember I told you about templates. Templates versus skeletons. Templates are nothing more than regular Appraise-It Pro report files that have been specially designated to be a template. So if I open up a blank report and I pre-fill some things in here, I put some certain, I change around the table of contents, put some certain addenda in there, remove others, fill out some certain addenda, I can then have that be a template. So it's a starting place for me by simply going to Home, going to Save As, and selecting Save As Template, and then I can give it a name. So I'm going to give this one Waynesville, hit Save. Now I can close out, come back over here to File. There's Waynesville. I just created it. Double click, and boom, it opens up. Anything you can do or put into a report, you can put into a template. It's that simple. It's very similar to what cloning was in Appraise-It Classic. So if you had a set of reports that you always started your reports from by opening them up and resaving them and editing them and everything, that's what templates are. And so they're much easier to deal with and to build and get started with. The one last thing I want to show you, and then we'll get to questions. Go ahead and type out your questions now so that we have them available here in just a minute. The little chat bubble icon that's up at the top, it looks like a little comic chat bubble. If you click on that, you can type out your question, and I'll get to those here in just a second. Of course, if you're watching this later, training@sfrip.com. Feel free to email me. I'll answer any questions that you have. But if you need tech support, of course, contact our tech support directly. You'll get service way quicker that way. The one last thing I want to show you is down here. All services are currently online, but let's say that we were having a problem with our flood maps. So if we have a problem with flood maps, this would turn red and you could click and it would say service outage flood maps. Or if we were having a problem with all our mapping, it may say service outage mapping or something like that. It may even turn yellow, and if it's yellow, that means we were having degraded service. So if flood maps were working, but they were just really slow for some reason, maybe the data center that stores them and hosts them was having some type of issue with their connection. So if they were slow, we might turn this yellow, and that would just mean degraded service. You can click here and see what's degraded service. If you want more information, you can simply click on that, and you didn't see it because it came up on my other screen, but it will open up a web page here. And here is status.sfrep.com. Even if you're not using Appraise-It Pro right now, you can still go to status.sfrep.com and you can see what's going on. And you'll see we have actually had some service disruptions here. These are all yellow because we were doing an upgrade, so it has this little icon that means that was maintenance related. But today we had a problem with Appraiser Genie Cloud because we missed something when we did an upgrade yesterday. So that was down for about 30 minutes. So you can see there's this little icon that says it was down, it says that was a service outage. So you can see that we did have that today, but it has now been resolved. So if you thought that maybe you were having a problem yesterday, you can always come to status.sfrep.com and you can see what the issue was. All right. All right, I think that is pretty much everything that I wanted to show you to kind of get you started. Now, if you need one-on-one training or you have some very specific thing that you need help with Appraise-It Pro, myself, I'm available. All you have to do is just email training@sfrep.com. You can ask a question. And if we deem that it's something that we need a little one-on-one with, I can set up a time with you and we can get in here together and talk back and forth and show my screen and we can do a one-on-one. Now, if you need tech support or you need help immediately, always contact our tech support. They're open 7 days a week during business hours. Contact them. They'll be happy to help you out. They're even there on the weekends. And of course, you can come over here to support and you can do chat support is in here as well, just like it was in Appraise-It class. You can chat with them, and then we've got our social media channels here as well. Okay. So I don't have any questions so far. So either I'm doing a great job or you guys are all up on Appraise-It Pro, or you might just not think of anything right now and you're going to have some questions later. That is perfectly fine. All you got to do, training@sfrep.com. I generally answer my emails during business hours. Within an hour, I'll get back to you. Be happy to help you out and point you in the right direction or get you in touch with whoever you need to get in touch with. Okay. So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I want to thank you guys for showing up and for taking a little time out of your day. Remember, there's no additional charge for Appraise-It Pro. You can contact our sales department when we get off the phone or when we get off this webinar right now, and you can start the ball rolling. I would recommend that you go ahead and get set up with Appraise-It Pro so you can move over now at your own pace. But we don't have a specific timeline on when we plan to get rid of Appraise-It Classic. As most of you have heard, there will be dynamic forms for the new UAD 2.0 that's going to be coming out. That's probably maybe a year away, maybe more. When that happens, that will definitely kill off Appraise-It Classic because we're not going to be adding those forms to Appraise-It Classic because it frankly just can't do that in the framework that it's built in. But they will be added to Appraise-It Pro. Did get a question here. Let's see what that is. Oh. Someone says, thank you. I'm glad you guys showed up. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. If you do need to get in touch with me, I am actually going on a mini vacation to West Virginia on Thursday and Friday, so I will not be available. I will kind of be available, and if I see your email on my phone, I live off my phone, some thunder out there, I'll be happy to answer, but just keep in mind I may not be available. In those instances, just contact their tech support, okay? Have a great rest of your week. Have a good weekend and stay nice and cool out there and stay healthy and safe. Thanks a lot, everybody.